Hey, how's it going? It's your challenger coach, Adam Moriarty-Isles, here to bring you our newest Mobalytics normal tier list for patch 9.21, so let's jump right into it. For the top lane low-elo list, our starting S tier roster will be Teemo, Yorick, Garen, Urgot, Kyle, Admiral, Kled, and Heimerdinger. This time around, we mostly just move things down in top lane, starting off with Singed and Mordekaiser moving down from S tier to A tier. This is due to how very linear playstyle top laners who just run around in circles, or the ones that right-click you then take their hands off their keyboard, are being punished by the ever-growing roster of ranged AP top laners like Kale, or losing the right-click battle to Garen because he's just that strong. Who, by the way, would be my pick of the patch for easiest way to hit gold at the moment. I think he's strong enough right now, even post-nerfs, that you could main a different role and just pick Garen top anyways and you could still make it. My real pick of the patch though is gonna be the GOAT of top lane, Ornn, going from B to A tier. Ornn top lane has been rising in popularity ever since his buffs came in 9.19, where the level to access masterwork items was reduced to 12 from 13. Traditionally, even at his peak, despite Ornn being extremely annoying, he didn't do very well in solo queue, but with this buff and the masterworks now working on items like Ludens, he is greatly impacting mid-game teamfights along with his ability to engage extremely easily. Though tanks like Ornn struggle in lane versus things like Garen, Kale, and Fiora, if you can avoid these matchups and instead get those juicy meta bruiser matchups like into Renekton, Camille, or even Riven, he will not only have a good time in lane, but then he will headbutt his way into the late game for an easy victory like the GOAT god he is. He is also worth a pickup, as like other tanks, he will likely be pretty strong coming into Season 10 meta. I'm sure everyone really missed the Ornn versus Maokai matchup, am I right? Keeping with the train of thought that champs that just run straight at you are getting weaker in top lane, we are moving down DR Mundo, Nasus, and Shen from A to B tier. It's just such a huge problem for them to get any kind of presence in the laning phase at the moment, as they not only lose to S tier melee champions like Garen or Kled, but they also lose lane to obnoxious non-melee champions like Kale or Teemo. What it comes down to in solo queue is that you need to have some kind of agency early on to consistently win games, and that if you don't have some kind of monstrous late game to make up for it, you're not going to win very often. Either way, the issue for champs like Shen at the moment is that they have far too many landmine matchups that they could run into, like versus Kale. Not only can Shen do nothing post-6 to deter Kale from scaling, but he would in fact be better off being AFK in base, as he's just Cocteau food for her at that point in time. Not that I condone that kind of behavior, of course. Next up, we have Swain moving down from A tier to B tier, as he isn't doing very well in top lane compared to mid lane, where he has a 54% win rate compared to a 51.15% win rate in top lane. And lastly, Mantheon is getting shadow realmed on the low-elo list, as the previous nerfs destroyed him at lower levels of play, as he can no longer snowball as consistently while retaining his poor late game. Moving down to the jungle, our starting S tier roster for the low-elo list will be none other than Volibear, Dr. Mundo, Master Yi, Nunu and Willump, Echo, and Shaco. We had quite a few changes to S tier this time around, with Master Yi moving back to S tier after the bug with Rageblade not working on him properly was fixed. Zac and Amumu also moved down, not because they're any weaker, but because the gap increased between these passive style tank junglers and the new wave of overbuffed junglers like Shaco. Now, Shaco did receive a nerf this patch to his box duration timer by 20 seconds, but all this did was remove one box from his starting setup, denying him the ability to be Giga Optimal for climbing, but instead just regular Optimal. This is because he can no longer be incredibly cheesy by level 3 ganking solo laners who are still level 1. Instead, Shaco players will be forced to unfortunately be able to only level 1 gank bot lane or gank a solo laner who's level 2. Oh no, whatever will they do? Yeah, still be an S tier champion for climbing, that's what. He is for sure still an incredibly strong jungler who ever since the update has returned to his old early ganking playstyle while also having a better clear speed and more utility from his ultimate. He would be my pick of the patch if I was the jungle rep, but since Flaren stole my old position, here is his pick of the patch instead, which is Warwick going from B tier to A tier. He says that Warwick jungle is seeing a power shift from maxing W first to leaving it as a 1-point wonder for this patch due to a 20% attack speed increase. This will only further Warwick's strong level 3 dueling potential and possibly see him maxing Q first from now on, especially thanks to the 2% damage boost at rank 5. Now, if you're gonna laugh and say, oh man, it's only a 2% increase, need I remind you that Sejuani's solo Q win rate tanked heavily by around 2 to 3% when Riot nerfed her W damage by 2%? As for his setup, you're gonna want to max Q, then E, then W, and you're gonna want to rush Tiamat into full tank right after that in terms of your item build. Pretty much Cinderhawk, Titanic, and then whatever else you want, it doesn't really matter. Going into the other A tier changes, we have Kayn moving up from B tier thanks to the buffs to his Q, allowing him to duel much better early on. It's definitely a really nice buff for him, but don't be fooled into thinking he's going to be S tier from it. He's still not going to be an amazing early game dueler, and it's fairly rare for him to hit both portions of his Q to get the maximum impact from this buff. We also got Graves moving down from A tier to B tier as he's fairly underwhelming in terms of damage output compared to what he needs to have to make up for his lack of CC. While we also cleaned up the list a bit by shadow realming champs like Fiddlesticks and Pantheon as they aren't strong enough to help you hit your goals for the end of the season. We will likely allow Fiddlesticks to return after his rework though. Our starting S tier roster for the low-elo mid list will be Malzahar, Fizz, Swain, Mordekaiser, Heimerdinger, and new additions AP Rock Wizard Malphite and Kale. For the S tier changes, you'll notice Echo, Pyke, and Vel'Koz moved down to A tier. Echo moved down mostly due to being a low S tier champion or high A tier champion, and we feel he is closer to A tier and fits better as a jungler in this meta anyways. He is being replaced by Kyle as he can really abuse the melee heavy mid lane meta. Not only that, but Kale is able to utilize the shorter mid lane to her advantage by having an even easier time dodging ganks, giving her a safer time to scale. Vel'Koz on the other hand is moving down due to the increase in heavy all-in champions in the meta such as Ahri, Fizz, or even Malphite. Pyke though is being brought down from S tier to A tier due to the nerf to his survivability this patch, but we will still watch his performance closely to see where he ends up. If I were to suggest one champion to main to get some LP in mid lane, it's gotta be the solid pick of AP Rock Wizard Malphite, which is why we moved him from A tier to S tier. This champion is almost as easy as playing Annie, but it's more fun and its win rate is much better. I'm sorry LS, it's the truth. He's just the optimal way to get gold at the moment and he has a 54% win rate to back it up. For his playstyle, you're just gonna want to waddle into Q range and poke people down until you hit 6 so you can all in them with your ultimate. Item-wise, you're gonna want to rush Ludens into either Death Cap or Protobelt. It seems to be the go-to for maximum wizard potential. AP Malphite doesn't really get too many off-tank stats. The way he tanks for his team is by one-shotting the enemy team so they can't do any damage. Whenever you have Flash and ult up, you want to make sure that you look for picks around things like Baron, as you will win almost any fight in this situation. But Pekkan's actual pick of the patch will be LeBlanc. He says that with Victor being buffed and Kale being picked more since people think if the pros can play her, so can they, it's a perfect time to play the assassin that punishes immobile characters like none other due to having one of the best gank setups in the entire game. You'll want to actively look for electrocute procs early on using autos and spells together. When you hit level 3, be sure to call for ganks whenever the jungler is free and the opponent is not sitting under tower. Once you land a chain, it normally means they're gonna die, or at the very least it's a flash. During the mid game, LeBlanc shouldn't be afraid to go to the side lane to split push as you have a lot of dashes to escape possible ganks and your 1v1 is really scary. You can even use your side lane pressure to force people to rotate through the river so you can get easy picks on them. For LeBlanc's item path, you're going to want to start Corrupting Potion, pick up an early Dark Seal, into Lost Chapter, Sork Boots, Ludens, Oblivion Orb, and then you can go Zhonya's Death Cap or Void Staff. You'll also want to pay close attention to LeBlanc's item power spikes. One of her biggest ones is level 11 plus Oblivion Orb and Sork Boots. This will allow you to kill squishy targets with Ignite even if your W didn't land. Looking at the rest of the changes, we got Garen moving straight to A tier because he's just that strong at the moment and he does well into assassins or melee matchups. Moving down despite his buffs will be Victor, and I know everyone was excited to think he might be good again, and he is extremely close to being A tier, trust me, so we might move him back during the update video while we monitor how impactful the bug fix to his Q augment will actually be. Champs we are certain about though are Pantheon and Brand getting shadow round, as they just can't keep up right now. Welcome to the bot lane low ELO list where our starting S tier roster will be Jinx, Ashe, Jhin, Caitlyn, Heimerdinger, and Yasuo, who is Hewitt's pick of the patch. He says that he recommends Yasuo ADC quite a bit, but it's still not as popular as we think it should be at certain levels of play. Yasuo is a hard champion to master, but he's incredibly effective in the bot lane. He has the DPS and scaling of an ADC, but the early game and utility of a solo laner. Most ADCs are gonna have trouble zoning him or beating him in all-ins because of his Q range and the win while beating their auto attacks. This only gets worse once he hits level 6 because dealing with bot lane Yasuo when he has access to supports who can easily trigger his ultimate is devastating for starting all-ins. So if you're at all capable of playing Yasuo, he's got incredible payoffs compared to traditional AD carries, and I highly recommend you pick him up. Since there are no changes to the list due to the stale nature of the bot lane meta, my suggestion for climbing this patch will be Ashe. Not only did she get an amazing new skin, but she's an extremely well-rounded marksman having long range, a strong laning phase, especially with the added auto reset on her Q, she's got strong utility with slows, and an engage tool with her ultimate, meaning she will always be useful even when behind. I know that might not seem important because of course you win lane every single game and your team just lets you down, but I thought I'd mention it anyways. As for item builds, you're gonna want to go the Bork Zeal Lethal Tempo style versus frontline or melee oriented team comps, and you want to do the Comet Triforce build versus long range squishy comps. She is currently the go-to easy champ to climb with, replacing MF for Sivir, but also happens to be strong in High-ELO, making her a strong investment. There might be a small downside to this where people might call you a noob Ashe player for whatever reason, but at the very least you'll be a noob Ashe player with more LP than the self-proclaimed mechanically skilled Vayne players. For our low elo support S tier roster, we have Soraka, Nautilus, Blitzcrank, Janna, Nami, Swain, and yes, Shaco, who is Will's pick of the patch. He says that for months now, he's been wanting to pick Shaco support as his pick of the patch, and he finally has the stats to back up how OP Shaco support really is. He has some insane poke damage during the laning phase, great disengage, and is really good at getting kills. Even though he's getting nerfed this patch, he will still be one of the stronger supports until players learn to adapt to him. He's really good into engage supports like Rakan or Leona, because his boxes will displace them when they try and CC people, and they won't be able to engage or even disengage properly after that. He says that it will make engage supports useless in the laning phase, unable to do anything. He's also fine into squishy supports because with his Comet and his E, he can outdamage a lot of the mages. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, he really wasn't joking about lobbying for Shaco support for months now. I always just vetoed it, but I can't argue with a 55.66% win rate and a 2% play rate back on 9.20. So just a huge shout out to Will for being the new Time Lord and somehow predicting this. Now, like Will said, Shaco did receive a nerf to his box duration this patch as it was aimed for the jungle, but it will still impact his support win rate on patch 9.21. Speaking of nerfs though, my main man, Money Man Pyke received a fairly substantial nerf to his survivability. It might not seem like much, but since he can't gain HP through items, losing so much of it during the mid-late game combined with the decreased gray health regeneration, it's really going to hurt his ability to survive teamfights followed by getting that free alt money from stalking people who are low on HP. I'm going to predict that even though we lowered him to A tier, that he might even fall down to B tier by the time the update video rolls around. I just doubt that Pyke players will be able to adjust to playing less like an idiot and will just get caught out and die way more often. Remember all those times Pyke got away with less than 50 HP and then regened all of his health bar? Yeah, you remember that? Well, that won't happen anymore, he's just going to die. This will likely cause the level of frustration when playing versus him to decrease, as he will now be an actual high-risk, high-reward champion instead of in the past being a low-risk, high-reward champion, which I think everyone just hated playing against. Thanks again for watching our low elo tier list for patch 9.21. Feel free to ask us any questions in the comment section below for us to answer in the next Q&A video. Be sure to check out more videos from this channel or overall statistics from Mobalytics.gg, and I'll see you out on the Rift.